Hey, the Clippers are on a pace for 82-0, and ClipperBlog Live talk about it. Fred Katz here, following the Clippers' very narrow 93-90 opening night victory over the Thunder, and over in LA for the first post-game show of the year is Patrick James.
That was not a good game.
That was just a really. It wasn't even that it was just close. It was such a terribly played game on both sides. I felt like I was watching Cyrano de Bergerac. Like, it was just ugly. It was not good looking.
It was like one of those dreams where you need to run fast, but the air is like quicksand, and you're trying so hard. That's how watching the game was. I'm not even talking about the gameplay. Like, watching the game was like that. Like, ugh.
There was one play which I feel like could very easily be on the SportsCenter and not top 10 when they do them on Fridays, which was like that. There was a loose ball, and then someone picked it up, and then they lost it again. It was the Clippers had a similar play in the preseason.
Benny Hill music playing.
I feel like when we watch the highlights of those games, they usually play like sports music highlights. There should be like sad Sarah McLachlan music over it. It was the death of basketball.
We need to adopt the Clippers, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I've been saying all preseason, just shorten the preseason. This doesn't matter. It's too long. It's 8 games. Make it 3 or 4 games, and it's fine. It's like, you know what?
Maybe we need a couple more weeks of preseason to sort things.
Maybe it needs to be like 25-game preseason, and we'll do like a 50-game regular season, and that's the way to do it. Because tonight wasn't good. So let's talk about it. The Clippers won 93-90, just barely. The first piece of news is just came across on Twitter. Kevin Arnovitz and all the Thunder beat writers and everybody else was tweeting it out that Scott Brooks said after the game that Russell Westbrook, who got hurt tonight, has a small fracture in his right hand. We don't know how long he's going to be out, but clearly a fracture in your right hand is never a good thing, and now the Thunder are even more decrepit with their injuries, with Kevin Durant out with the Jones fracture. Reggie Jackson's already out. It's unfortunate for this team, which now I guess Ibaka's their best player, and
Terry Jones' team now. Might be Terry Jones, though.
We'll get to Perry Jones in a little bit. First, I just want to ask you, what happened tonight? Was it opening night jitters on both sides? Was it just rust? Was it an off night? Were there trends that you thought, hey, this could be a thing that we see throughout the season?
I think there's a bunch of little threads that you can kind of weave together into the tapestry of your own liking with this game. But look, Blake Griffin struggles against Serge Ibaka because Ibaka is arguably as athletic as he is and longer. And so you have a similar amount of bounce, and Ibaka can kind of get in his way. So that's a problem. That said, Griffin had 23 points. 8 for 18 isn't great, but it's not bad either. Griffin wasn't the problem, I don't think, tonight. It was a quiet 23, but whatever. The Clippers going 7 for 30 from 3, that was an issue. They missed a lot of open threes. There is the optimistic view of this game, which is that, a couple more of those, 3 or 4 of them drop. They're 10 or 11 for 30, which still isn't great, but they do that, and then all of a sudden it's not even that close when we get into the final minutes of the game. That's kind of the optimist view of this. The pessimist view is that Perry Jones scored 32,
yeah.
17 shots. Which brings us back to the question of this Clipper wing problem, which is probably something we're going to revisit throughout the year. The Clippers getting a win when Chris Paul misses a couple free throws late in the game, that seems like a good thing. The Clippers needing Chris Paul to make a couple free throws when Reggie Jackson and Kevin Durant aren't really playing for the Thunder, that seems like a bad thing.
Well, let's talk about Chris Paul down the stretch, because in the last about minute and a half of the game or so, we saw J.J. Redick chucking up probably ill-advised threes, and Blake Griffin running it up the court and as if he's running a fast break and kicking to Redick in the corner. why is the ball not in Chris Paul's hands at any of that point? Is that on Paul? Is that on Paul?
Here's the thing. I actually like Griffin taking the ball up court. That's good because it's his game evolving. It's confidence. I like that. I like that he passed the ball to an open Redick in the corner. What I wanted to see was Redick catch the ball and wait for a defender to close out, pass the ball back to Griffin and or to whoever is occupying the top of the kind of arc area, get it to Chris Paul and let him operate. Like that's what you want to see. It's like maybe you take the open look. The last one didn't go. Redick had missed the corner three on the opposite side. So then when Griffin brings it up court, you think you pass it to Redick and then he'll kick it back out and get it to Chris Paul and like let him go to work. You're up one. He's guaranteed to get you some points. And that didn't really happen. That was kind of frustrating, but it's hard to get too upset about anything that happened in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my problem with it is that I love it when Griffin takes it up the court, which is something they did not do once in the first half, by the way. Griffin started, and when Griffin's not really rebounding, it's not something that happens, but they weren't outletting it to Griffin. He wasn't running it up the court, which is when I think he actually looks the most comfortable because he'll often take it up and just go into his post-ups from there. He'll get to the spot on the floor that he wants because he'll usually be his man. He'll make passes. But late in the game, you're not trying to hurry up the clock in those situations. And when you make that corner three, all Redick is thinking is shoot. So sure. I think when you want to control game pace, I want Chris Paul with the ball.
I mean, I think the thing I like about it is Griffin taking the ball up court is like, hey, defense, react. There's a chance that they'll gamble. There's a chance that they'll kind of commit to him. And if somebody else is running behind him, you get a good result. But I know what you're saying about control and getting the ball in Paul's hands. And, I agree. I wanted the ball in Paul's hands a lot more than it was really throughout the game. I thought there were a lot of times in the first half where the game was a lot closer than it needed to be because Paul was kind of just like letting the ball circle around the perimeter and result in a kind of contested jump shot as opposed to, running a little high pick and roll, which that works. Let's run a little bit of it.
Who was your player of the game tonight?
I mean, I think you got to say it's Serge Ibaka for having them in the game. Or maybe Jones. I don't know. Like, it's not a Clipper.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It's kind of. I think it's probably Jones for just going.
I mean, like they were really impressive. Those two guys. Not to be too Debbie Downer about the whole thing, but the play of the game was not a Clipper.
Ibaka, I think, used to be overrated. I think he used to be. He could always shoot. He could always shoot from
overrated last year.
He was not overrated last year at all.
He became properly rated last year.
Fantastic last year. Yeah, when I say used to be, I mean like 2010, 2011 Serge Ibaka when he was still kind of block happy. He wasn't very disciplined on defense.
He liked to bounce and go for the block.
Yeah, he had all the potential in the world, but he hadn't necessarily put it together yet. Last year, I thought it just all came together. I thought he was one of the 3 best defensive players in the league last year. And he's obviously a fantastic mid-range shooter. He started hitting corner threes very consistently last year. Now all of a sudden, Ibaka is legitimately hitting wing threes and threes at the top of the key.
Yeah.
Like, that is scary. I mean, we talk about Blake Griffin shooting and it's scary, and Ibaka's a very different offensive player than Griffin because he doesn't put the ball on the floor. He's a catch-and-shoot guy, but my gosh, I think he's become underrated. He has become an absolutely fantastic player. I mean, he's never made an all-star team. He is definitely a caliber player in my mind. I think he's just fantastic.
Yeah, I mean that's the crazy thing. We were talking about this the other day about like Chris Bosh made 6, 10, and then 21 threes his first 3 years in Miami, and we have collectively thought of Chris Bosh as this deadly 3-point shooter, but I feel like Ibaka is already a better 3-point shooter than Chris Bosh was, a year or two ago. It's certainly a couple years ago. Is that crazy? I feel like Ibaka is like I'm way more scared of an Ibaka open three right now.
I agree with you. And Ibaka is earlier in his development. Ibaka's still so young. He's like 25 years old.
And I'm not saying he's a better player than Chris Bosh because the savvy of Chris Bosh, the Chris Bosh savvy post move and passing game, that's kind of untouchable in the NBA right now. But man, Ibaka he's not just a guy anymore.
No, he's really tremendous. If he's hitting those threes, I mean, I said to you before the show, I think he's just the most unique. If he hits close to triple-digit threes, or he hits a three a game this year, which he's hit 3 threes in the first 2 games, and I don't know if he's going to hit a 3 a game. I think he hit 50 or hit like 50 last year or something like that. But if he hits a 3 a game, I think we can label him as the most unique 3-and-D player in the league. Strunk and White would kill me for using the phrase most unique because that is not correct, but that's what I'm going to call it. Because we think of 3-and-D as these perimeter guys, and
think of you think of Sean Marion or Scottie Pippen or something. Actually, that's not really a good description of Scottie Pippen, but you know what I mean. Like you think of a lengthy wing guy that.
Yeah. Or you think of Danny Green, or you think of, we're talking modern day, like you think of those guys, and you don't think of the Ibaka type. But it's incredible the type of player he's become. I'm very excited about his development because I love watching him play.
Excited, terrified, whatever.
Definitely both. Terrified as a Clipper fan, but very excited as a basketball fan because I love watching him play defense, and the fact that he's
great.
He's always been a great shooter, but he's hitting threes is amazing. Let's get over to Perry Jones because this might be indicative of another issue. As we said earlier, Jones 32 points, 17 shots, 3 for 6 from 3. It was 7 boards. He was 10 for 17 from the field. Got to the line 11 times. I mean, he was great. He was hitting floaters. He was hitting jumpers. He was creating off the dribble. He played point guard for a little bit in those really weird lineups because that the Thunder were just forced into because they have no one else on their roster. And he looked very comfortable doing it. Jones was a really, really top high school prospect and was supposed to be great and kind of was a little bit, I guess, earned a reputation being passive at Baylor. And that continued into the league, but he was not passive tonight. Was this just Jones playing amazing, or is this indicative of something worse for the Clippers?
Remind me, Fred, or is he in his 3rd or 4th year?
I want to say he's in his 3rd year. I can double check right now.
Yeah, it's one of those two. I can't tell if he's already played 3 or if this is his 3rd. But the point is, like,
his 3rd. Okay,
so he's in that area where you still don't know what he's going to be, right?
Sure.
If it's a guy that's getting a lot of minutes and in a good situation, and he's not producing on a regular basis, you can kind of be like, all right, we know what he's going to be. But he's been on the Thunder the whole time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like what we don't really know. He's an unknown kind of in the NBA. And I think he's had a good game like this in each of his 3 seasons, this being the 3rd. So it's like there are signs, there are flashes, but it's pretty exciting, I guess, if you're a Thunder fan to see this. And it's pretty disheartening as a Clipper fan to have your kind of primary concern being perimeter defense and get torched by somebody that for most of his career hasn't really done anything.
Yeah, I wrote earlier, I think it was on a ClipperBlog. I can't remember if I wrote it for Bleacher Report or a ClipperBlog. I think it was ClipperBlog mailbag. I said, everyone's talking about, like, they don't have a guy to guard LeBron and Durant. If they get that far in the playoffs, what are they going to do? That's not the problem. Guarding LeBron and Durant is not the problem. You know what? A lot of teams don't have guys to guard LeBron and Durant. The problem is they don't have a guy to guard Gerald Green. That's really the issue.
Yeah, the Spurs don't have a guy to guard LeBron.
Yeah, they don't have a guy to guard. They don't have a guy to guard Perry Jones. I mean, it's really a problem when you get there. And that's actually, I'm going to take the first question of the year. which is there somebody out there the Clippers can or should target as a 3-and-D? That's from Clips since '84 in the comments section. Do the Clippers need to target someone as a 3-and-D pickup before the trade deadline comes?
I've spent a little time kind of looking around, at what's available, and I don't see anything happening without a trade. It's a little too early for me to speculate about who on the Clippers should be traded. I don't think it would be responsible to, after one game to say who those people should be. That doesn't make any sense. But, there's nobody who can do what they need to get done that they can find on the market that's just out there right now. They need somebody that's with the team. Well, that's my general take on it.
Yeah, no, I mean I'm with you. I think it's a little panicky, even though we're saying that this is an issue and it's going to be an issue. It's a little panicky after one game to start saying, "Oh, who can they trade for?" There's certainly nobody on the free agent market who can.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying they need to make the trade. I'm saying maybe there are solutions that can be accomplished within what they already have. Maybe there's spacing solutions and kind of getting acquainted with each other and communicating better. There are all sorts of nuances that we don't understand, as guys who aren't playing these games every night. Maybe there's something that happens, within the team, but there's definitely not some guy that they're going to pull up from the D League that's going to be their 3-and-D answer.
Right. A lot of this has to do with team defense as well. DeAndre was not wonderful tonight. This was not his best game ever. He was kind of rotating out of place a lot. I think he was a little aggressive and left the paint pretty often, and guys weren't there to help the helper. The defense was a little bit off, but that's not even a concern for me. That's something that happens to pretty much every single team early in a season, because defense is just, in that sense, is just about communication, familiarity, and the only way to get that is throughout time over a season. You can't have that in the first game. So I don't think that's a concern at all. I don't think.
Yeah, and if you look at the opponent field goal percentage at the rim when DeAndre was on the floor last year, it was atrocious in the couple days of October, and similarly bad in November, and then not that bad in December, and then kind of okay in January, and then February, March, April, pretty good. So, you expect DeAndre to kind of go on that arc. He gets better over the course of the season. He gets more comfortable. I'm not really worried about him, especially given that the Thunder bigs just frustrate the heck out of Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan.
Other end of the floor, Clippers 7 for 30 from 3. They were missing tons of open shots. We're not worried about this, right? This is just missing open shots, and they're fine.
It is. I don't think the Clippers have. I think back to, say, the 2012 team when pre-ACL tear Billups and Mo Williams and Chris Paul, when they were and Caron Butler were nailing threes at a really high rate. I think this team isn't quite as good a three-point shooting team as some of the Clippers teams of recent years, but I'm not worried about that. Other than that, I want them to make more.
I want them to make more purely out of greed. That's
all.
Let's we've talked about so much negative. The Clippers, they won this game. They didn't lose this game, and somehow we're being pessimistic 48 minutes into the season. So let's talk about something good. Blake Griffin, 6 for 10 on shots 16 feet and beyond tonight. That's a good thing. I mean, his jumper looked great all preseason. Looked totally changed. Looked great again tonight. He was hitting step back. Steven Adams was really – he had a move where he actually faked a step back and did a dribble backwards and then went to the rim, and it worked because Steven Adams bit on it wasn't even a pump fake because Steven Adams was so worried about the step back, which he had done twice before then. So I mean, this is great to see from Griffin. I mean, his game's going to transform if he can do this consistently.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it was in the third quarter he knocked down an 18 or so footer, and then a play or two later took one and missed the rim almost, an outside shot, and then the next time down court, drained kind of like a step back, uh, 16 or 18 footer, and it's like that's a good thing for him to have. Just like I'm not thinking about the last possession, I'm not thinking about the last shot, I'm not changing my rhythm, I'm not gathering and slowly kind of setting my feet and then going up with it. He's shooting like a shooter, and that's great.
Yeah, I mean it's the jump shot looks great. I mean I do have one thing that does puzzle me, which is he's taking all these shots with his heel on the 3-point line. And he's taking step backs from 22 feet. He's taking shots off the dribble and pull-ups from 22 feet. He's taking catch-and-shoot jumpers from like 23 feet and 4 inches. I don't understand why he doesn't just go 6 inches back and shoot a 3 on those open catch-and-shoot opportunities. I'm sure it's because the 3-point line is not just a line. It's a mental barrier as well, and shooting threes is something that takes confidence as much as it does physical ability to make them. But I feel like physically, if you're able to shoot it from 23-4, you shoot it from 23-9.
The thing is, his feet are really big, so the heel on the line is deceptive because to me, like he's actually quite far away from it. It's just that you're like, well, his foot's touching it. It's like, well, yeah, but his foot isn't like our feet. No, I think you're right. If you're shooting long twos or foot on the line threes or one step back could get you an extra point, obviously that's a more efficient shot. The flip side of it is like everything that I think Blake Griffin's shooting coach Bob Thate is stressing is rhythm and repetition and this kind of motion where you have your muscle memory coming into play. And I think what I care more about in terms of his long-term development is just that he's catching and shooting and releasing in a really quick way, in a way that feels natural, because that seems like the thing that's going to yield long-term results. I think the intellectual kind of, oh, I'm at 22 feet, this would be a better use of my shot if I were to take a step back. That'll come later. Like let's let him fully build up the confidence. The 6 out of 10 from long range is better than any missed opportunities for threes, I think.
I mean, we can certainly agree on that point. Let's take a couple questions before we go. We have a funny comment from also from Clip-Since-84, which is the Thunder are going to be the sketches, which is possibly very true. They're going to be horrifying if they're like a 7. Although the Spurs did get a 7 seed a few years back, and that was a pretty scary 7. Okay, we have a few questions, and I'm sorry I'm not going to say your names because there are a bunch of them from you. Why is the Clippers rebounding not better? Is basically the gist of the majority of questions we have tonight. It's the wings, right? I mean, it's not
it's the wings. I think I really, really do think Griffin struggles against the Thunder. I think that's a thing. And I think Jordan was out of rhythm and struggling. Like, he finished with 10 rebounds tonight. It really should have been 13. There were 2 that he went up for and just lost because a smaller guy kind of knocked it out of his hands. And one other that DeAndre just kind of didn't get. So it's like 10 is whatever, 13 seems great. That it could have been whatever. Griffin, leaking out a little bit, getting kind of in his head a little with Ibaka playing so well. I think that's an issue. And yeah, they don't have a small forward who can kind of crash the boards and act like a kind of, really what you want in this day's NBA is a power forward who can be stretchy like a small forward and a small forward who can get rebounds and go small ball 4. And you want both of those guys. You don't want one or the other. You don't want to be kind of shoehorned into a role. You want to have the option of both. And the Clippers they don't have that small forward who can like grab the ball and kind of go after it like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Blake's leakouts because that's something that doesn't get talked about as much. I think a lot of people talk about his rebounding. His rebounding has gone down since his rookie year, and he went from 12 to 10.5 to 8, and then back up to 9.5 last year. And why is he not at 11 or 12? And part of it is that DeAndre is playing more minutes, and he's a better rebounder than he was before, so he's taking some rebounds as well for himself. But Blake leaks out more over the last year and a half or so than we've ever really seen him do. You're not going to rebound as much when you're prioritizing getting out in transition. Being able to catch outlet passes changes that completely for him because now he's taking the ball up the floor on a relatively consistent basis. So that really changed the way that he boxes out, crashes the boards in that sense on the defensive boards. So that's a big thing. The offensive rebounding for them is okay. It's really the defensive rebounding. But you look at it, I mean, Crawford has in his career been last in the entire league in rebounding rate in single seasons in his career. Redick had the same rebound rate to the exact 10th decimal point as Crawford did last year. CDR, when he plays the 2, is a fine rebounder, but he's playing the 3 for the Clippers, and if we just
you'd like him to be a little bigger for the 3.
Yeah. I mean, it's just if you look at these guys just from a rebounding percentage aspect. I mean, CDR, Crawford, and Redick are all below league average for the positions they play, and especially when they go to a small lineup where they play Paul, Redick, and Crawford together. That's not a lineup that's ever going to grab boards. Even if you have Kevin Love and DeAndre Jordan out there, you're probably not going to get a lot of rebounds.
And that's the thing is that that's kind of the Paul, Redick, Crawford, Griffin, Jordan is kind of the lineup you want in the last 2 minutes of a game. Once you can't foul away from the ball, you want DeAndre in there. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. You want DeAndre in there. And you want Redick and Crawford in there because those are the guys that are going to make shots. But like, you don't have a rebounder with that group. And there's not some other guy that the Clippers can turn to right now with their current lineup to kind of just go get the ball when they need the ball. Unless, Griffin is really changing how he plays.
All right, Patrick, we're going to wrap it up right now, I guess. Before we go, I want you to just explain to those watching and listening who might be freaking out about 7 for 30 from 3 why it's really not a very big deal at all that they went 7 for 30 from 3 tonight.
It's not a big deal because they have most of their guys are going to be able to knock down those threes at a much better rate than they did tonight. I think they need to improve and they need to figure out how to generate better shots, but they're going to do fine. A couple more of those fall, and this isn't a close game.
Yeah, and they got a lot of open looks too.
Open looks are more important over the course of a long season than like the actual percentage in some ways.
Well said, sir. That's going to do it for us tonight. Clippers barely pull it out against the Thunder and earn a 93-90 victory. We'll be back with you tomorrow evening. The Clippers play the Lakers in the Los Angeles battle. After I know a lot of people think that's going to be a blowout, but tonight should have been a blowout too. So who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? That's the Halloween game. I'll be doing it with our guest Jack Winter. Hopefully, he'll be able to come on. He's scheduled to come on right now. Jack of Dime Magazine. For Patrick James, I'm Fred Cass, and we'll see you tomorrow.